There's a surprising statistic out there that 40% of adults still sleep with their childhood stuffed animals, even when they share a bed with their partner, like their spouse. Is that you? Do you have, I don't know, a Cookie Monster or a Holly Hobby or a stuffed Chihuahua that you sleep with at nighttime and you have for decades? Is your spouse cool with that? According to a recent study conducted by One Poll for Serta Simmons Bedding, 77% of individuals who grew up sleeping with a security blanket or stuffed animal continue to do so. What about other sleeping habits that you might want to talk about prior to getting married, like sleeping with the TV on and stuff like that? Is probably more important than you realize. Let's talk about it. Janice Gaunt is a counselor, a relationship expert, and author of the just-released book, Prince Charming is Dead or in Rehab. Great title. Janice, welcome to All Talk. Nice to have you.
Oh, thank you for having me.
So I think this is surprising. I don't know why it is. I don't sleep with a stuffed animal, but I'm sure a lot of people do. Does this matter in relationships, do you think?
Well, it depends. It's not surprising that there are people who continue to sleep with their blankets or a stuffed animal that they've had for years. Because when, the moment a baby is born, we swaddle them in a blanket and put little stuffed animals. When they get used to walking with them, they'll carry them with them. And so we have an emotional and a psychological and a physical attachment to sometimes an external object that makes us to feel safe. And so it can be an issue in a marriage, but it's important that if it is, that you talk about it. Because as I talk about it in my book, it's really important that people learn to discuss these areas of uncomfortability that have the potential to hurt somebody's feelings or they'll get upset about it, because you have to learn to negotiate in a relationship. I think some of the things would be difficult, like if someone had really bad body odor, it would be difficult to sleep with that person, I think. And I also think that things like snoring or something that can cause problems when couples are sleeping in the same bed. And some couples agree to go to different beds just because of that. Our sleep is really important to us. And what we want is we don't want that to cause a resentment in the relationship.
Yes, I think that's the larger issue here, isn't it? The fact that, listen, humans require sleep, and when that sleep is getting interrupted, whether it be, I don't know if a stuffed animal would do that. Maybe that's just more of a dependency issue that needs to be talked about, and that's fine if it is. And I think you bring up a great point that we do need, it's important to talk about these things prior to, they say you're going to get married. Bring these things out. But even after marriage, it's important to say, listen, I didn't tell you everything. Here's what you need to know about me. I struggle with this. Can we work this out? Yes, that's fine. Let's do that. But when you're talking about sleep disruption, let's say you have a habit of watching television with the volume jacked up all night long and you can't sleep without that TV on, and your partner's like, there's no way I can sleep with it on. What do you do in that situation?
Well, that's tough. Maybe what you do is you say, okay, well, on the weekend, it's not that big a deal because it doesn't matter if we're tired. But I really think that it is, for someone who is not used to sleep with like the television on, it would be really hard for them to develop the capacity to be able to sleep with the TV on, because a lot of people need quiet in order to fall asleep. And disrupted sleep really messes with our neurotransmitters in our brain, and we can go into some depression if we don't get enough sleep. So in that sort of incident, I think that the person is, maybe you watch TV for 30 minutes and then you turn it off. I don't know, but that would be hard for people to negotiate.
Yes, it would. I can't imagine.
Glad my husband doesn't do that.
Yes, I am glad my wife does not do that. But for those who have spouses that do that, or maybe something else altogether, but it's disruptive for one of the parties in this, are there any strategies or maybe techniques that a couple can kind of agree to try to employ to help mitigate all these sleep disruptions?
Yeah, I think that it's all about asking for what you want. And, a lot of times what I have to teach people to do when I'm doing marriage counseling is make sure you're asking for what you want as opposed to complaining and griping about what you're getting. So that if I say, hey, babe, the snoring is really driving me crazy during the week, and so I'm going to go sleep in another room or on the couch, and it's not because I don't love you, and it's not because I'm not attracted to you. I just have to get sleep. And I think that the absence of sleep can actually paint the way we feel about our partner if we're not getting enough sleep.
Yeah, I mean, there's nothing wrong with asking that. Is that's not indicative of a larger issue? If you're just not sleeping and you say, I gotta sleep in another room, that's okay in a marriage. That's not like, well, now they're sleeping in different bedrooms. I mean, I guess it all depends on the motive behind it, but that would be okay to do, right?
It would be absolutely okay. And, what some people can do also, I've had couples say, well, then when are we going to have sex?
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, you have sex, and then you go to another room and sleep.
Yeah.
They're not mutually exclusive.
Right. You're not having sex in your sleep anyway. Well, at least most people aren't, I hope.
I've never talked with anybody who did that.
Yeah. So let me ask you this. At what point, it says a husband and a wife, they're together and they're just not overcoming this, and bitterness is developing, their hearts are becoming hardened towards one another. At what point do they realize, and it's kind of imperative, that they get some outside help, something professional? Maybe it's a book or maybe it's an actual counselor.
Yeah, I think that both are effective in a way, because it's about, when we normalize sometimes our dysfunction in a relationship or the pain points in a relationship, when we normalize that, it almost makes it easier for us to resolve it, because we don't think that we're the only people that have this issue and that there are no solutions. And it's all about negotiating and being kind and attentive to the person who has the complaint, and being able to develop our capacity to hear something that may be a little bit offensive to us, but to be able to negotiate through it and push through it. It's a good marriage is something that we do. It's not really something that we have. So it's learning how to focus on what's going to be best for our relationship in the long run.
Yeah, and it's your marriage. It's not someone else's. You're not going to do what someone else does. It's got to be tailored specifically. And I absolutely agree with you. Good marriages don't just happen. They don't just fall into place. You got to work at it. Absolutely. The book is called, I think it's a great title, Prince Charming is Dead or in Rehab, A Guide to Dating in the Real World. And from a realist's perspective, I appreciate that you wrote this book. Thank you so much. Janice Gaunt is a counselor and a relationship expert and author of this great new book. Thanks so much, Janice. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me. It's really fun. I appreciate it.
Yeah, you got it. We loved having you on. Come back anytime.